I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. I am your host, Dr. James Bryant. It is my pleasure to be here with you for today's show. So this podcast provides tools, tips, and techniques to help you achieve success both in business and in life. We focus these episodes, whether they are interviews or solo episodes, on the information, tools, and techniques that will help you win at work and at home. Before we get into today's topic, I wanted to talk about the next series of the Success On Ramp. So the next Success On Ramp is scheduled for August the 16th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So this session is going to focus on building your vision. In fact, we're going to take the next 3 Success On Ramp sessions and really focus in on building vision, because I think that it's a very important area and topic for us to really conquer and master, because vision gives imagination permission. You know, we're often limited by what we can see. So if you're interested in expanding your capacity to dream, you do not want to mix the next 3 on-ramp sessions. These are small group meetings and limited to 12 participants. So you want to make sure that you use the link in the show notes to register and save your spot. The link is going to be included in the useful resources area. There's a sleek bio link that will take you to all of the different resources and social media that we have on the podcast. Speaking of that, if you follow me on social media, you've likely started to see the hashtag AskJamesAnything post. And so this is an opportunity for anyone to ask me a question and possibly have me answer it on the air during the show. Today's session is in response to the following question that I received. And that's this: have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, what did you do to overcome it? My answers are simple. Yes, I have experienced it. In today's show, we're going to go into not only talking about imposter syndrome, but the things that I do and I walk clients through to help them overcome it. So let's dig in. What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome, in terms of the dictionary definition, it defines imposter syndrome in part as a persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of ongoing success. Imposter syndrome can affect anybody, no matter of their social status, their work background, their skill level, or the degree of expertise. Get this, as I was doing research for this episode in terms of looking at different statistics, around 25 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from imposter syndrome, and around 70% of adults may experience imposter syndrome at least one time in their life. So what are some of the characteristics or some common characteristics that imposter syndrome includes? One, an inability to realistically assess your competence and your skills. A person that is attributing their success to external factors. You berate your own performance, fear that you won't live up to expectations, actually overachieving. So if you're a consistent overachiever, that may be an imposter syndrome reaction. When you're sabotaging your own success, when you find that you are having self-doubt and you are settling very challenging goals. So you set those challenging goals, but feel very disappointed when you fall short. Again, 70% of people will experience at least one episode of this phenomenon at some point in their lives. Some other questions that you might ask if you think, have I ever experienced this? Could be some of the following. Do you agonize agonize over even the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Do you attribute your success to luck or outside factors? Are you sensitive to even constructive criticism? Do you feel you will inevitably be found out as a phony? Do you downplay your own expertise, even in areas where you are genuinely more skilled and gifted than others? So thinking through my own experiences, I faced this both personally and professionally, whether it's questions of, am I a good husband or I'm not a good husband? I'm not a good father. I'm not a good engineer. I'm not a good business person. I'm not smart enough. So for me, I've faced a lot of those questions in the development of my career. And what I found very useful was really engineering the story that I tell myself. And this isn't making up a story, but using the available information and facts to really highlight the truth about the topic. So if someone were to tell you a story that made you look bad, you'd probably feel bad. However, if someone crafted a story that really highlighted all of the great things that you've been able to accomplish, I think that that would have a positive impact on your own view of yourself. And the truth is that you will never be able to outperform your view of your self image. So I take clients through a process called mirror moments where we see things for what they are, or we see people see themselves for who they are, not who they project to be. And so when you're looking at imposter syndrome, you are projecting a certain false self, the person that is not living up to expectations. And you begin to peel those things away and begin to look at the reality of the situation, begin to look at what you're actually accomplishing and what you're able to do. There are some people that may be even in the engineering realm. Let's say that you didn't pass the professional engineering licensing exam the first time. Okay. All right. All right. You didn't. Now what? You go back, you study, you look at the areas where you might want to improve, and then you try again. Just because you didn't pass the exam the first time does not mean that you're not a good engineer. It just means that you didn't pass that exam. Just because you did not pass the exam during that time doesn't mean that you are a failure. It means that you failed the exam, but that does not identify you as a failure. Hey, I'll tell you what, I took the PE a couple of times. I didn't pass it the first time that I went through. And you know what? No one has ever asked me throughout my 20 plus year career as an engineer, how many times did you take the PE? What was your score on the PE? Or how many times did you take the EIT? Or, the engineering and training or the FE exam? Nobody ever asks you those questions because they really don't matter. But yes, I have dealt with this whole imposter syndrome. And I think through early on in my career, before I was equipped with the tools that I have now, how do you overcome it? Right? How do you overcome it? So, okay, I'm in grad school. I'm focused on working on my PhD. There are a lot of people that are there that, in my opinion, are really, really smarter than I am, right? They're doing all kinds of really hard things, but those things didn't really interest me, the things that they were doing. I was more into systems and the practical application of engineering, not the analytical or theoretical. So I learned to apply my skills in a way that was going to help me build a career that I would love, that would help me really kind of lean into that. And it took me a while to find my place, even after getting my PhD, even after going to work, even after getting my professional engineering license. You deal with this consistent thing of, am I good enough? Did I study enough? No matter what the actual accomplishments that you're able to make, it was there. It was there. It took me a long time to become comfortable with the person that I was professionally. It did. So I'm not going to lie about that. And it may take you some time, but no, just start peeling away, looking at the reality of the situation, the things that you are able to accomplish, and highlight those. Another thing that may help is start to keep track of your accomplishments, right? Whether it's every week doing a kind of weekly shutdown, whether it's at the end of the day, a daily wind down where you're able to start listing through the things that you've been able to accomplish, because being able to look back at your story kind of helps. And so when you're crafting that story, you want to have those things to be able to pull from so that you can continue to engineer your story to overcome these issues that you may face. So what were some other specific things for me that I ran into? One, would be early on in grad school. There were not a lot of African American males that were pursuing their PhD. And I remember going to a large engineering meeting, with people from my school and some other graduate students. And we were there at a hospitality suite, and everybody's there to kind of do the mixer and talk to people. And I remember thinking to myself, do I really belong here? There are not many people that look like me. And that kind of exacerbated the problem, or at least in my own mind. And then one of the people that were there came to me, and I know this is going to sound like the general joke, started asking me if I could get them a drink, as if my job was to actually serve them. And, my response was, no, sir, the drinks are over there. And so he says, well, what do you do? He said, no, actually, he didn't even ask me what I did. He says, oh, so you must be on the football team for that school. And I said, no. And he says, you must be on the basketball team for that school. And I'm like, no. And so finally he looks at me and says, well, what are you here for? Well, sir, I am a student pursuing my PhD in construction engineering management, and blah, 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 blah. And so the guy looks at me, kind of turns away and kind of walks out the room. So you can imagine, as I wasn't as confident in my abilities then as I am now. So you can imagine psychologically, it just feeds into this whole narrative that you're not good enough. The people that are here don't see you as equal. They don't see you as good enough. They don't see you as smart enough. And, part of one of the symptoms or characteristics of, when you have imposter syndrome, is when you start to overachieve. So can you guess what happens? You start to study more. You start to think that I need to be better than everyone else, because in my own brain, I'm not as competent as everyone else. And so it does fuel you, and it can push you to do great things. But in the end, you have to transform that and take hold of that story to use it for your benefit. I've had other experiences in terms of working as an engineer, but the reality is, here's the thing. And for those of you that are looking at the video, I'm looking straight into your eyes, and I want you to hear this. And for those of you that are listening, I want you to imagine that I'm looking you straight in the eye. You belong. Okay? You belong. You belong in the room. You belong at the table. You belong in the place to create your own room and your own table. Never, ever let anyone craft a story for you that tells you that you do not belong, because you do. If you're struggling or having issues with whether you belong, or whether or not you're good enough, or whether you're smart enough, start to look at the reality of your situation. Begin to engineer your story. Begin to leverage the things that you have been able to accomplish so that you can use that to tell yourself a story that will continue to just reinforce the great things that you have been able to accomplish, the great things that you will be able to accomplish, and just the great things, the person that you are. So you belong. All right, that's going to end this week's episode. I'm going to end this podcast episode like I end every podcast episode. Many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there's a select group of people that actually follow through and do it. And I want to congratulate you for your journey of being on the road to being that select few. Again, remember, you belong. Be great this week.